So our keynote speaker this afternoon is Ms. Hillary Van Dyke, and it is my pleasure and honor to introduce her to you all. She is one of my best kept secrets that the community is really just finding out about everything that she has to offer. She has impressed me at every turn, and I'm so excited for you to hear about her work. Hillary has more than a decade of experience as an educator and is passionate about achieving educational equity and ensuring a future for the lives of Black youth. She holds master's degrees in educational leadership and is currently pursuing her doctorate in social sciences curriculum from the University of South Florida. Hillary has worked as a diversity, equity, inclusion practitioner, training people from a variety of sectors on bias and racism. She's the co-founder of the Green Book of Tampa Bay, the host of Podcast Pedagogy, and a volunteer leader of Outdoor Afro, a nonprofit leadership network that connects Black people to nature experiences and is changing the face of conservation. Hillary, welcome.
Thank you. Can you all hear me? Cool. All right, so I'm Hillary Van Dyke, as Maya said, and I'm really excited about being at Basis and talking to y'all. Yesterday, I got to also kayak with some of you, which was fun because we're still alive. But the title of my talk is We've Been Here, and as we go through this, I think it'll make more sense why it's called that. And you can go ahead and click. So I am the CEO of Invincible Summer Enterprises, and what I do with that work is diversity, equity, inclusion training and consulting, yoga teaching, which is kind of random in that mix, as well as historical tours in St. Pete. I'm also the co-founder and executive director of the Green Book of Tampa Bay, like Maya said. That's a Black-owned business directory. Along with having the directory, we have a social media presence and different events to try to boost Black businesses in Pinellas and Hillsborough County. So what I'd like us to do first is have you all talk a little bit about yourselves. So go ahead and click. I'm an educator by trade, and so I like to start my conversations with what we call an opening circle. Now, obviously, you know it's not going to be a circle in this situation, but what you are going to do with 2 or 3 folks near you is I want you to have a conversation. If you haven't already yet, say what your name is, talk to each other about what your favorite way to recreate outside is, and then how that activity makes you feel. So I'm just going to do like 4 minutes on the clock. I'm going to be walking around and making sure you're actually talking to each other. So don't just stare. Don't start talking about what you're doing tomorrow. I want you to talk about these things here. So, oh, wait, one more thing. Wait, hold on, y'all. One more thing. When I need to grab your attention, I'm going to say, hey, class, and you'll reply by saying, hey, teach. Can we practice that real quick? Hey, class. All right, and then once you say, hey, teach, that's your signal that we're like moving on. All right, 4 minutes, go ahead. Hey, class. The other thing I forgot to tell you is if I change how I say it, you have to change how you say it. So we'll practice that real quick. Hey, class. Beautiful. All right, so you all were talking to each other about your favorite way to recreate and how that activity makes you feel. Are there 3 brave souls who'll share with the whole room what you shared with your group? I'm also really comfortable with awkward wait time, so yeah. Oh, sorry. Oh, the people online. Hey, y'all, sorry. All right, I'm coming to you. So it's really just gonna be you 3 because I'm not gonna move all around like this.
Hi, my name is Tara. I said horseback riding, and it makes me feel very relaxed and kind of connected with nature.
All right, I'll answer more seriously than they answered to them. I'm Mark. I like bushwalking, and it makes me feel tranquil.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Chris. I like to run, and it makes me feel free. It's a very freeing activity, but it's not as good as Jamie's. She's going to tell you what she likes to do.
Hi, I'm Jamie. I'm going to answer truthfully. I prefer floating around in my pool with a margarita, and it makes me feel saucy.
All right, I like it. I like it. So my answer is either hiking or kayaking. for the same, oh, someone's calling me in that, for the same reasons that you all said, feeling at peace, feeling like I'm reset. I really like that word you use of feeling free. And so the other part of my identity is actually doing that work to help Black folks get outside and have some of those same feelings in nature. So I also am an adventure guide for She Travels. That is a company that gets Black and brown women out on big, crazy adventures they could never have imagined. As Maya said, I'm also a volunteer leader for Outdoor Afro. And through that, every single month, I take Black folks out doing something in nature. And finally, well, maybe not finally, but I'll just share this. I'm an adventure curator for Get Black Outside. Get Black Outside takes small grassroots organizations that try to get Black folks outside and partner with the U.S. Forest Service to do snorkeling and camping in national forests. So, with that, whenever I'm doing activities out in nature in a group, generally I'm the only one. And by that, I mean the only Black person. If I'm there with a group of Black people, we are the only Black people in that space. Like when people are like, "How do we find you?" I'm like, "Bro, you'll find us." And so the thing about that, though, is it really starts to reinforce this idea that it's weird for Black people to be out in these spaces, or that there's the stereotype that Black people don't do these things. Like when I ask some of my friends to go camping with me, they generally say something to the effect of, "That's white people shit." And if I'm at the campground or the hike or wherever, we often will deal with white people saying things like, "Oh, are you a church group? What's the other one? Is this a family?" And none of those sorts of things are malicious, but it really speaks to that idea that to them it's weird that we're in this space. And so today, what I want to talk to you about is just trying to disrupt that notion that we are the only one or that it's weird if we're in these spaces. You're going to also see pictures on the slides that pretty much have nothing to do with what the slide is about. And that's because I'm going to use Inception to help you also feel normalized about the idea that we're out in these spaces too. And so with that, we're going to talk about Black folks outside. Now, I could realistically start all the way back to the motherland, but Maya gave me 40 minutes, so I can't start that far back. So we're going to start with just Pinellas County, Florida, thinking about how long Black folks have been here in this space, using nature to live. A lot of what I'm going to share comes from the countywide cultural survey. It is a historical document that just shows how Pinellas County developed. And if you are a nerd, I highly recommend reading it. It's amazing. Oh, wait, you all are nerds. So, yeah, go ahead and read that. So, early 19th century, we have evidence of Black folks in Pinellas County. Indigenous people and fugitive enslaved people moved south and formed Seminole communities. Along with that, we also have Cuban fishermen and fugitive enslaved people forming fishing camps along the Pinellas shore. And some of those happen in Seminole communities as well. And to me, this is really important because that's really early on that we see this evidence of Black people having to use nature to literally build homes, to eat, and then you can see also to sell and make money and feed their communities and feed themselves. But then, sorry, I'm being dramatic with the points. Summer of 1821. So in 1819, the United States purchases Florida and starts their formal occupation in 1821. And so a lot of those Seminole communities start to disappear because of raiding and burning from the US. And even though Pinellas settlements weren't impacted by that per se, it was still obviously scary to Black people in those communities because they were being enslaved or re-enslaved. So many of them fled this area and go to the Bahamas or to the Keys. So then we have evidence of what we call our first Black settler in Pinellas. I struggle a little bit with that phrase because I think it's definitely like the idea of what a settler is comes from like white colonialism. But this is our first Black settler, John Donaldson. He comes in 1868, works, saves up some money, and becomes the first Black landowner in 1871. With that land, he has a successful farm. He has sugarcane, sweet potatoes, has an orange grove, cattle, hogs, all that sort of stuff. So we can see again how he's using the land to live, to work, and to play. And also, he's kind of a big deal because in 1886, when Pinellas secedes from Hillsborough County, his name is one of the signatures on the document. Keep going. So 2 years later, after he's purchased land, all right, actually, let me take this jacket off because this story, y'all, this gets my blood going. So 1873, some Key West turtlers found a sponge field near Tarpon Springs and come back with Bahamian sponge divers. Now, if you go to Tarpon Springs, you will see zero evidence of Bahamian sponge divers. All you're going to see is the history of Greek sponge divers there. About 30 years after the Bahamians come, John Corcoran recruits some divers from Greece, and within the year, about 1,500 Greek folks move in, and they're working not just with that company, but alongside those Bahamian divers. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that I agree that you should go and take the sponges out of their natural environment. We're not even going to go there right now. But I still think it's a really interesting story about these Black men who are free diving to the bottom of this water source to get these fish. And I say that because of my own experiences with not knowing how to swim, with thinking that it's weird for me to know how to swim. By the way, those of you that were with me yesterday, you saw my shirt says I'm Black and I swim because I do swim now, so clap for that. But the reason I think this story is important is because there's all these statistics around Black children disproportionately drowning, and that's been true for decades. It's going to continue to be true until we make some big changes. But I organized a group of 10 folks to get scuba certified last year. One of the people was going back and forth about whether or not she wanted to do it, but this history of Bahamian sponge divers inspired her to finally say yes, despite the time and the cost that this was going to be. And so, if that inspires a grown woman, imagine the ways that this sort of a story could inspire children. But at the moment, we're not doing a good job of making sure people know about that. Keep going. So, as Pinellas County continues to develop, we see a lot of Black folks coming, moving here to work in different industries that are related to being outside, the citrus groves, building the railroad, working in the tourist industry. But along with the influx of more Black people becomes really making sure segregation is codified and that there are rules of who gets to live where and work where. When John Donaldson was here in the 1870s, his kids went to school with white children. So it really was as the numbers grow, you start to see that evidence of segregation, action mattering, and being a part of laws. Go ahead. So, for example, 1916, St. Pete Mayor Al Lang makes what is called South Mole, which was a Black beach. If you go to Demon's Landing, I don't know how many of you are from here, but it's like 2 blocks from here. That might be an exaggeration, maybe like 4 blocks from here. And that beach, despite being separated from the white beach, still upset white citizens because Black folks had to pass through their town to get to that beach. And actually, for about 30 years in early 1900s, this is a conversation back and forth in St. Pete of where do we put Black people so we can hide them from the tourists, but also give them a beach. So we keep growing. Hotels are coming up. Have any of you been to the Don Cesar? The Vinoy? Yeah, so those are still there. So those big pink castles are built. They're segregated. We keep growing. We're seeing bridges connecting Pinellas to other parts of Pinellas, Pinellas to parts of Hillsborough. Keep going. And another thing that's going on in the backdrop of all of this is in 1936, Victor Hugo Green starts to publish what is called the Green Book, which was also called the Negro Motorist Travel Guide. And it helped Black people navigate a Jim Crow America. So if you needed to go north to south, south to north, it helped you know how much gas do I need to carry before I can stop safely, or how much food, or where can I pull over safely. But I think I'm going to say favorite, not because I'm like glad it existed, but my favorite thing about the Green Book is that it also included things like campsites you could stay at safely. So that shows you that even in this document that's intended for safe travel, we still know where we can safely recreate with our families without ending up in trouble. The national parks are desegregated in the 40s. but it's another 20 years before the Green Book stops being published. So Pinellas County keeps growing. Loads of parks are built. Many of these, if you look at the year they come up, would have been segregated recreation spaces. One little side note I'm going to say that has nothing to do with my talk at all is a lot of them were built on historically significant places, including Philippi Park. This was named after Odette Philippe. If you read our county history, he's listed as the first white settler, but it turns out that he's biracial. So I'm just throwing that out there. He's half Haitian, like I'm Haitian, he's half Haitian, so I'm just saying. Anyways, but they get these historically significant places have these different get built in the 60s. Keep going. And if you actually go back one, if you think about this here, we have all these parks being built. Legally, they really shouldn't be separated anymore, but just because of local custom, a lot of them are still segregated. Now you can click. And that's when we start to see Black folks fighting this in the area. So, for example, in 1954, Ralph Wimbush challenges Pasadena golf courses' segregation policies. Rather than integrate, they sell it to a private owner just to avoid it altogether. One more. And when we look at the Spa Beach incident, have any of you been to the pier? Okay, so if you're looking at the pier, right to the left of it is a beachfront. That is Spa Beach. There also used to be a pool hall there, so that was Spa Beach and pool. So in 1955, after Brown versus Board says separate but equal is illegal, some students go and try to go to Spa Beach. The city refuses, so they bring a lawsuit. So for the next 4 years, there's all this drama around whether or not Black folks can go to the pool. Kids would do a swim in, the city would shut down the pool, back and forth. They also sued the city, won, and the city still refused to integrate it. But in 58, it was so ridiculous that they just closed the pool for the whole rest of the summer. There was some money that was supposed to be for Gandy Beach, and instead of using it to make a Black beachfront, they actually built the all-white North Shore area. And then finally, after 4 years of fighting, they opened Spa Beach and pool on an integrated basis. So I could keep going here, but I'm gonna pause because I think this really is sort of the beginning of the integration. It's another 8 years before our city integrates or our county integrates schools. It's a whole thing. But I want you to think about, now you can click next, in your own experiences, what you're curious about learning more about. So a lot of you are not from Pinellas County. So if you go back to your own spaces, what is it that you want to learn more about? What are you curious about? And then reactions in general to what you've heard from me and thoughts that you're having. And some of you are going to have to be brave and speak. As you saw, I have to hand the microphone, so I'm going to just stand with one group. So whatever group that is, make sure you're ready to share. All right, so I'm going to give you like 5 minutes to talk reactions and what you're curious about exploring further. Go. Make sure you're on topic and behaving, you guys. Hey, class. Hey, class. Okay, Joe, that was pretty good. It's pretty good. All right, so I've learned that there is a microphone to pass around. So just want a couple folks, or let's do 3 maybe, to share either reactions you were having or what you're curious about learning more about, whether you're from here or wherever you are from. And if you're sharing the second, just tell us what city you live in. So remember, I'm good with awkward wait. So who wants to share first? All right, Jessica, we got someone over there.
Hi, my name's Carly. I'm from Maryland, originally from Keatonsville, but I work in Berlin on the Eastern Shore. Um, Unfortunately, I'm not surprised by what I've learned today because it's, part of America's history and it's really unfortunate. But what I'm curious about exploring further is how our organization can become more involved in Black communities and gain their trust, and how we can determine their needs versus going into their communities and telling them what they need. I think that that's really important and something that we as an organization can work towards. But just looking at our communities that we typically hit, it's not necessarily minority groups. So how can we work towards gaining their trust, maybe decreasing that intimidation factor that might exist, and just making a safe space for them to feel comfortable.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Who else? I paid her to say that, by the way. Two more people. Don't be scared. You got someone?
I was just going to follow up on what she said. I'm Tiffany. I'm from here in Pinellas. So I was actually really interested in I learned a lot today that I hadn't heard, and I'm a resident of this county. So that was very interesting. But to follow up on what you were saying is we were talking about how I'm an on the ground restoration practitioner and I focus on coastal systems. And when I think about trying to reach, other groups and underserved communities, a lot of them end up being inner city areas. And as a coastal practitioner and focusing on these coastal habitats, who ends up living on the coast right near the water and stuff ends up being, wealthier communities and stuff. And so how, based on, my job description and what I do, how can I, reach some of these other community groups and stuff when, who lives on the coast, those that can afford it and stuff. And so that's kind of a difficult bridge for me to figure out.
Thank you. One more brave soul. This side of the room is rocking it. So what we got over here? We got two. So we'll do him and then we'll go over to you.
Hi, we were, as a group, me in particular, fascinated by the revisionist history. And so thank you for teaching us something today and giving us food for thought. I hearken back to day one of this symposium where Maya said, look around, I'm the only one in the room. That Maya, not this Maya. She's the only one in the room, but for other reasons. But just that notion of how do we get more people of color involved in STEM and make it so that a T-shirt that says I'm black and I swim isn't funny. It just doesn't make sense. And I think there's a long way to go there, but we need to start somewhere. So that's kind of what we were talking about.
Thank you. And last one, the other Maya. Or are you the other Maya? Okay.
Thanks. That's Maya B, and I'm Maya T. And I live in Tampa. And one of the things that I raised in the group, but I think everyone in the group agreed that we see this everywhere, maybe in different forms. The question that I was curious about was, how do we support and amplify and spread the work and persons like you? So as you're hearing that many of these programs around the country would like to do more of this, and this is loaded because I am working on trying to create that type of platform. But really and truly, how do we do that? And are agencies willing to buy into that?
Thank you. So we, well, all of you were sort of thinking through the what can we do thing. I think a lot of this history, by the time you get to 2022, is very contentious and makes those spaces awkward to enter into, where every time you're there, you're like bracing yourself for the comment or the thing that's going to happen, or the, unsolicited advice on your gear. You're like, bro, I'm just trying to walk. Like, calm down. Anyway, but there's some simple things that I'm just going to suggest 3 things that I do think are important for you to do. And then the last slide, I'll have my contact info, Maya, so we can talk through, at least locally, some other ways we can get that done. So first of all, learn. If you live in Pinellas or Hillsborough County, go to greenbooktb.com/history-spree. This is basically it's copied after Hillsborough County hiking spree. There's 7 locations for you to visit, and once you've gone to all of them, you get a prize. What? But I think this is really important because when you are learning about Black communities, you start to undo some of those stereotypes that you might have about who belongs where and realize that we've been here all along doing these things. But the conversation has to move more towards just recreating and not necessarily having to focus on the work part in those spaces. Another thing I'll say is authentic engagement, y'all. Listen, real talk. Authentic engagement does not mean contacting Hillary Van Dyke, who you've never met before, say, hey, I have this park. Can y'all come clean this park up during Black History Month? And that's like funny, right? But it happens a lot. The first time you engage with a community, like let's say Outdoor Afro or Get Black Outside, Unicorns of Diving, like there's so many of these groups doing this work. It cannot be that you want us to come clean up your property or do some kind of work. It has to be maybe you show up to a hike just to come and just to learn and meet people. Or that you invite us into the space to enjoy the park first. And maybe we care about enough to go volunteer and do things for it. That particular park is one that you can fish off of. You can have picnics at. Like there's all sorts of things you could do at that park. But their first inclination was to have us come clean it. But then I think about another time where we did have any of you been to Lake Dames or Peace Cave and Dames Cave, something like that. But there are these caves in Florida that have been so damaged by humans that they're like holes in the ground still, but they just don't really look like what you would imagine a cave would look like. And because we visited this space, everyone was so just sad about what it looked like, all the graffiti, how damaged everything was. And from that, she actually gained some volunteers to come and help and try to like patrol, if you will. And so recognizing that having us in the space to see it, learn it, fall in love with it, that's going to get you more authentic engagement than just trying to have us work. This, I did shoot, some of the pictures match up to what's on there, right? This is a work party with Florida Trail Association. We've hiked with them before, and then we also were learning about trail maintenance. So this is authentic engagement versus just trying to get us to work and then never talk to us again. Or putting the pictures of us on your Facebook. One more. I'm like giggling, but this happens so often. And the last thing I'm going to say is really so simple. Just say hi. Okay? You don't have to ask about the family reunions. You don't have to ask about the other things. The stuff that you would just say to other white folks that you're walking by, just say it to us. Like, hey, having a good day? And keep walking. Like, we don't have to do the weird stuff that makes us feel othered in the space. And I know this one doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but it really is. Like, and you don't have to go out of your way to be nice. Just literally say hi and keep it moving. So that is really all I have to say. If you could click one more slide. If you have interest in chatting with me more, please email me. Please call me. Please text me. I do have interest in having this conversation, especially with people who are locally doing work. A lot of you have really interesting programs that we can recreate in. So let's talk. Thank you. Yes. Maya told me to let you ask some questions. Just kidding. Any questions? Yeah.
I'll just share one experience as an individual that I think has gone a long way for me personally, as well as helping one individual young Black man, and that's being a big brother. And I've had the experience for 7 years now with a boy who was 6 years old, and I'm welcomed into his family. And and the real key is just to be a part of their existence and not, bring my shit into it, if you will. But having had this experience with this bright young boy, and he's now 13, I've exposed him to oceanography. We snorkel. He's even tried to put on a tank. We've been horseback riding. We've been to a horse sanctuary. We work with horses and kayaking at parks and stuff. So just as individuals, it's been very rewarding for me to learn of his experience and to recognize he's just a kid like any other kid. We have a blast. So I just want to bring that up. As an individual, not an organization.
Sometimes when I talk, I give the suggestion to diversify friend groups. But I also don't want people to go like grocery shopping and be like, hey, you're black. Um, so I do agree that like getting to know people that don't look like you can be very helpful. And that applies to the organization as well. If you're looking around and your organization looks like this room, then stepping out of that comfort zone and bringing in folks who are doing that work to have real conversations. And then I think also recreating together is so powerful. Those of you that were on the kayaking trip with me yesterday are in love with me now. So I think it's just a who else? I think there was, a question over there. So you can,
While I'm on the way
Jessica
over,
will decide.
I'm going to ask my question while I'm walking.
Hey.
What's your favorite ocean animal?
Oh, zero.
Come on.
I don't know. Those things are scary, all of them. Sorry, y'all. I know some of you care about that. I don't. I can't do it. I can't lie. Seals? There's seals in some oceans, right? Yeah, seals.
So with Pinellas County, our environmental management division, we have a really robust internship and volunteer program, and we do a lot of different activities. And over the past 12 years where I've kind of coordinated it, now it's Christine. One of the things that was always kind of in the forefront was, we would have diversity training and whatnot, but I never really felt that I got a grasp on how to recruit across barriers. Like we would have professionals from all, we have a lot of diversity in our program, but making that space, like how do you suggest, like for volunteers or interns or whatnot that may not necessarily think of us as a volunteer opportunity, how can we, at least here, reach out or start tapping into some of those resources?
I think I will also say the one suggestion of actually like finding some of these groups and just start attending those programs. We we do a lot of stuff at, let's just say, Boyd Hill, for example. And so it isn't weird when Boyd Hill is looking for, kids to do this camp or this other thing to post it, and it doesn't feel like soliciting is happening. It feels like a real program of a place that you've been to several times. The other thing I would say is tapping into schools, and not in a way where you just like pop in on the Great American Teach-In, but where you become like some sort of a club or some sort of activity that they can actually do that thing and then want to come back. Kids are at the end of the day, the kid has to want it and they're going to go home and talk about it. So thinking through how you can actually like really immerse yourself and not do like a pop-in visit that they're not going to remember your name or the name of your program, but how do you make that like experiential thing happen so they want to come to you outside of school, outside of outdoor Afro, because when y'all start hiking with us, right? Yeah, okay, cool. I like it. Who else? We had some other questions. I'm just letting Jessica decide. I'm gonna stop pointing at people. Also, please note, I'm speaking from the experience, like my experiences. I'm not speaking for all Black people right now. But if you do have real questions and wanting to do that kind of work, hit me up. We can work together. All right, go ahead.
That's great. I just wanted to add something positively. If we took a picture of this group in 1975, you could count the number of women in that group on one hand. So, I mean, whatever we've done right over the last 30 or 40 years in terms of, increasing the diversity, not only in terms of color, but also in terms of sex, we can actually do. So just maybe there's some lessons we can learn from that.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's it. All right. Well, thank y'all again.